While ECS treats all outages as temporary site failures, determination of a permanent site loss requires a human judge to analyze the facts. ECS includes procedures for permanently removing a site if required. This section explains how ECS handles the recovery when a VDC or a site experiences a permanent site outage, or PSO, situation. Let's look at an example of how ECS reorganizes to serve an object read operation in the event of a permanent site outage situation. The administrator initiates PSO procedure, which includes transferring ownership of namespaces, buckets, and objects owned by VDC3 to VDC1 or VDC2. During the PSO operations, any request that requires checking with VDC3 as the owner simply fails. This includes operations pertaining to any attributes owned by VDC3, such as namespace listing, object creation in bucket, and so on. Chunk B is recreated as a copy of VDC2 and using the data from the primary VDC1. The chunk manager table on VDC2 is updated, marking chunk B as copy. Chunk D is recreated on VDC2 using the parity chunk E and chunk B. Chunk D is added to the replication queue for VDC1. The chunk manager tables are updated to reflect that VDC2 now hosts the primary copy of the chunk D and VDC1 hosts a secondary copy. Until the replication completes, VDC1 keeps the type as remote. Chunk E is deleted and removed from the chunk manager table of VDC2. VDC1 becomes the new primary site for chunk A, and VDC2 becomes the new secondary site. Chunk A is added to the replication queue for VDC2. After the chunk manager tables on VDC1 and VDC2 are updated, VDC3 no longer is the owner of any chunk. The failover operation is complete, and any access that requires checking with the owner is restored. Replication of data is separate from the failover operations. The replication queues continue to process, thus re-establish data durability across VDCs. VDC2 replicates chunk D to VDC1. After the replication completes, VDC1 updates its chunk manager table to change the type to copy. VDC1 replicates chunk A to VDC2. After replication completes, VDC2 updates its chunk manager table to change the type to copy. VDC2 replicates chunk C to VDC1. After replication completes, VDC1 updates its chunk manager table to change the type to copy. When a PSO occurs in a geo-passive architecture, two possible scenarios can take place. The scenario depends on if the PSO affects a source VDC or the replication target VDC. Let's first discuss a target VDC failure PSO scenario. The administrator initiates the PSO procedures. VDC3 does not own any object, buckets, or sites. Therefore, no ownership transfer is required. The data is recreated only when a replication target VDC is back online. New create and update operations continue, and they are added to the replication queue. The replication queue is processed once the new target VDC is established. When a new VDC is added into the replication group as the new replication target, the chunks waiting in the replication queue of source VDCs are replicated to the new target VDC. The chunks on the replication target are replaced by parity chunks from the XOR optimization process. Let's discuss the second PSO scenario in a geo-passive context when a source VDC fails. The administrator initiates the PSO procedure, which includes transferring ownership of namespaces, buckets, and objects owned by VDC1. The priority for the federation is to recover all primary data from the lost VDC. Chunk B is recreated on VDC3 using the data from the primary VDC2. The chunk manager table is updated and holds a copy of the chunk. Chunk A can be recreated on VDC3 from the parity chunk Z and chunk B. The chunk manager table is updated and stating it holds a primary copy of chunk A. No new secondary copy will be created until after a new source VDC is added into the replication group. VDC3 no longer requires chunk Z, and it is deleted and removed from Chunk Manager table. New data can be written to VDC2. The new data is replicated to VDC3, but no XOR operation is performed until a new VDC1 source is added. A new VDC is added into the replication group as a new source. The chunk on the replication target marked as local are replicated to the new source. The target VDC Chunk Manager table updates information to become the secondary VDC and to hold the copy of the transferred chunks. The target VDC encodes chunk copies using XOR operation and updates its Chunk Manager table accordingly. Chunk copies, no longer required, are marked for storage reclamation.